So easy. It just works for you. Whenever our patron Santorios shows up.
Natural with technology.
Man, got a nice group arts already.
Yeah, not too bad. Too bad. Okay, we're already there. Oh, YouTube got me saying I'm a natural with technology. Of course it is.
Oh, goodness.
All right, we ready, boys?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, here we go. All right.
All right.
Okay. Let's go. Hey, welcome, everybody, to the weekly edition of the Not Your Average Investor Show. Today, we're asking big money questions. We're talking about selling or holding within your portfolio. Portfolio optimization, I believe, is what some of the smarter investors call it. But in reality, what it is when you have a property and you're having you've had some high maintenance moments in the property, I think it's very natural to ask yourself, should I stay or should I go, right? Should I upgrade to another property? I think it's a very natural thing. And that question was born from the patron Santorios himself. I'm your host, Pablo Gonzalez. With me, as always, a man that I affectionately like to call GC because he's got the genius concepts, knows how to generate cash flows, and is a great co-host. And his name is Greg Cohen. Say hello, Greg.
Hello, everybody. Fantastic to be with you today.
And the star of the show today, our guest investor, a legend in our community. We call him the patron Santorios of the community because he's kind of like the clubhouse leader for bringing his friends to the community and good vibes. Mr. Michael Santorios, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. How are you? Or afternoon, actually. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, man. Good to have you on here. Michael, I think you're familiar with the way that we normally start the show. Are you familiar with how we start the show?
I think it's something called the roll call.
The roll call, baby! We got Stylianios Valsamakis saying hello everywhere. Is that Benny? Is that
gotta be Benny?
That's got to be Benny. That's got to be Benny. That's got to be Benny.
Is it Benny? Benny's better half.
Benny's better half or Benny on
Benny's family is here. We love y'all already. Thanks for being here.
Mark Norman is in the house.
All right, Mark.
With his great questions. Who else we got in here? We got
Billy Green.
Good morning from the Chittimisty Mountains of Colorado. We got the monsieur.
Reggie Ponce.
Reggie Ponce. Bonjour, man, from the end of the Bahia. We got Lincoln Lowry in the house.
Right, Ed. How are you?
We got Il Maestro.
John Williams.
Famous composer. We got Archibald Nardi from Canada.
Becoming a regular, Archibald. Welcome.
Welcome to the show, buddy. Belinda Baldwin from Dallas, Texas.
My buddy Belinda.
Good to have you.
You like that one?
I like it. My buddy Belinda. Did you just make a nickname?
I just did it.
Our buddy Belinda.
6 years on the show, I made a nickname.
Look at that. Breaking through. We got the maven from the mountains of Denver.
Miss Leslie Wilson.
We got Cliff from Atlanta. New name?
Right, new name.
All right, Cliff. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Is this a friend of yours, Michael?
Oh, maybe. I don't know.
Soon to be.
Soon to be.
Soon to be. Exactly. Soon to be.
Make a friend. The magic here is in the chat. So talk to people. These are all folks that have various investing journeys with a lot of insights for you. So make sure to use that chat. We got that early bird in the house.
Dean Curry.
Dean Curry coming up. He's back, man.
I've had an opportunity to chat with Dean the last couple of weeks. It is so nice to see Dean and his lovely wife.
Dean is the man. Tony D is in the house.
All right, Tony.
We got our regulars, Gary and Rosalind, writing from Marietta, California.
We regard you.
We got the mystery man wishing us a happy tax day.
Mr. Denny Davies. Oh, it's tax day today. Tomorrow. There we go.
Tomorrow. Thank you, Denny. I got to file for my extension. I appreciate it. No more mysteries. Justine Herrera is in the house.
Justine, my ride-along partner.
Good to have you back. Marty Quinn from Golden, Colorado. Marty's starting to show up. Marty,
welcome.
Good to have you. We got the Shaw man in the house.
Nadeem Shaw
from the Pacific Northwest. We got another Leslie Ferris.
All right, Leslie.
Is that a new name?
I believe so.
Leslie, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Good to have you.
We love Leslie's around here.
Yeah, we do. Who else? MJ Rueda from New Jersey.
Is that a new name?
I think so. MJ. All right. Welcome to the show.
And thank you for saying hello.
Yeah, make a friend in the chat. Who else we got?
I saw an Hervé Francois sighting.
Hervé Francois is in the house and I missed him.
You missed him?
God, Hervé, sorry, bro. Good to see you, man. Who else we got in here? We got I saw another name in here that I was looking for. David Baird is back.
All right, David.
Good to see you. Welcome.
David's a longtime JWB client. I believe so. Really nice to see you, David.
Hervé said that hurts.
That was really good.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. So let's get to the topic. Actually, we got breaking news, GC. What do you got for us today?
We have some fun, exciting, great breaking news to share. It's revolving around rental income that we have collected on behalf of all of our owners and then paid out to all of our owners. That number continues to go up month after month. In the month of March, JWB collected a total of, what's that number there?
1,764 clients.
Yeah.
And you gave out 5,245,471.05. LASIK still paying off all this.
Yeah, I know. Holy cow. That's really good for your LASIK. Mine is bad. But by the way, $5 million each month our team collects on behalf of our owners, pays out as this positive rental income and cash flow across over 1,700 clients. So big thank you to all of you for putting your trust in JWB. Big thank you to the wonderful team that we have here working so hard. If you could imagine collecting over $5 million in rent every single month, that's what happens in behind the walls here at JWB. So thankful, and just thought we would celebrate a little joint victory together with all of our clients.
Love it. Love it. Pedro Santorios, you get some of that cash flow yourself, huh?
I did. Not as much as 5 million, but I'm hopefully getting there soon.
You're on the way. You're on the way. I got a little bit in my pocket.
There we go.
Not 5 million either, just for the record.
There we go.
We got the left tackles in the house to support his buddy.
Jeff Moroncow.
Hey, Jeff.
Mirancow.
I think I go back and forth. I screw it up every time.
Yeah.
You're kind of rubbing off on me with screwing up names.
I'm a bad influence. All right. That being said, Pedro Santorios, Michael Santorios, and I are sitting down at the Not Your Average Investor Summit, and he brought up a really good conversation, and it's a conversation that only comes from an experienced investor, right? So this is a bit of what you have to look forward to, and some high level kind of like thinking around your real estate portfolio. Before we want to get into the conversation, we just kind of want to like bring everybody up to speed to see where this comes from, right? So Michael's been investing with JWB since 2016. He was just telling us. Michael, what'd you say? You said that when people find out that you have 13 properties, they ask you how you get there?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. How did you do it?
Yeah. How do you do it? Right. And
one at a time.
One at a time. Exactly. Build a plan, go one at a time. So he's gotten there from 2016 to now, 13 properties, also does private lending with JWB. And, most notably, he's our patron Santorios of the Not Your Average Investor Show community.
Most impressive.
And this is what his portfolio, investing for 10 years, right? This is one market cycle of investing. GC, you want to go through this for us?
Yeah, this is just a great example of what it is to, number one, have a plan, be supported by the right team, and then execute this plan. Michael and his wonderful wife, Ann, have executed this plan to fruition over 10 years, and they've done a really good job. Their money, ever since inception, has returned almost 13% as far as a rate of return. That means every year the money that they've invested continues to earn above average returns on investment. Their total profits are almost $2 million for their total portfolio. That's just the profits. That's not the initial investment there. Out of that, you can start to see the Pac-Man principle play out for Michael, like we talk about all the time. Pablo, can you hit him with the Pac-Man principle?
The Pac-Man principle playing out over here. This is when you lay out actually, you know what, Michael Sartorius? Why don't you tell us the Pac-Man principle?
Oh, it's a combination of the appreciation of the property, the tax savings, all the different aspects. The cash flow is the most important for me, but the appreciation is the one that does the most. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. When you lay out the 5 profit centers of rental property investing in a pie chart, what you will end up seeing is that the biggest profit center, that is always somewhere between like 60 to 80%, is home price appreciation. So when you lay it out in a pie chart, it looks like home price appreciation is the Pac-Man that is eating up all the profit centers, even when you've got a whole bunch of net rental income as the second biggest right here, right? So eating a nice chip of net rental income. And when I look at this, I think of, it's what it says here. One of the 42 JWB clients that have earned over $1 million in profits, right? Like we show these rankings of the community of like, I think there's one person that has over 5 million.
Nope, not yet.
No, not yet. Anyway,
but close.
So 42 folks in our community that have earned over 1 million in profits. Pedro Santorios, the secret's out. You're one of these guys, and that's really, really cool.
There's 5 that have earned over 2 million.
2 million, yeah.
There's number 6 and number 7 are right on the doorstep. Michael and Ann are right on the doorstep of those $2 million client thresholds.
All right.
Cool. So this is the pie that Michael gets to play with. And what became clear to me is, Michael, once you have like these kinds of ingredients, you can really start thinking like a financial engineer and really start thinking like an asset manager, because you got all this stuff. So Michael, you want to take us back to that conversation we were having at Summit and how you were looking at your portfolio and the conversation you wanted to get into.
Yeah. So when Pablo and I were sitting down at the summit, we were having a conversation around, different types of topics that real estate investors come across. And, one of the things that I had teed up for Pablo was that, when you have a number of properties, I mean, you could say three, four properties, but once you get into a larger number, where I'm sitting at with 13 properties, sometimes you want to look at it like you do when you talk to your financial planner about your stock portfolio. Is it time to rebalance? Do you have this one piece of property that might be the Pac-Man's not growing like the rest of it is? Is it not appreciating like the rest of them? Is the maintenance higher than the rest of them? Is the insurance higher than the rest of them? And when you add all that up, does it make sense to hold on to that property, or should you consider doing a 1031 tax exchange into another newer property that might appreciate more, that may have a lot less maintenance, lower insurance cost, maybe even generate more rent for you? So that was the topic of the conversation where I teed up with him and said, this would be something I'd love to have a conversation with other investors with.
And you want to say, yeah. So like, so to me, that idea of, what if I have an old property substituted with a new property? That to me, honestly, Michael, like I hadn't even really thought about that because I'm so like indoctrinated in this whole, like, these are all widgets to me, but
Yeah.
super, super natural thing to ask.
Yeah.
Right. Like I have an old property. I think we've talked on the show about how kind of like they all have similar appreciation rates, whether it's old or new, because once a property is 2-3 years old is no longer a new property kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also talked that they have different maintenance rates, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of, I want a different experience, right? Like I don't want to, like I want to like lock in this idea of very little maintenance for a while by buying a new property. I know I can 1031 exchange into my portfolio at a tax advantage position,
Mm-hmm.
advanced strategy, but still it made a lot of sense for me. And it was all kind of based on, Michael, you told me that you had a spreadsheet of the way that you tracked this stuff, that had you like where the insight came from, a way that you kind of like keep track of your portfolio, right?
Yeah, so you have to keep the properties for a period of time. You can't look at a 1, 2, 3, 4, or even a 5 year window. You got to look longer than that. And so a couple of the properties were purchased in 2016, some were 2019. And there was one that had popped to the top and it just had a lot of maintenance costs. It just, for whatever reason, it just did not seem to be appreciating and had a lot of maintenance. And it was an older property, so the insurance was one of the higher insurance rates than the other ones. And so then I just started thinking, what would it be like to go ahead and sell that property, do a 1031 into a newer property, or maybe even 1031 it from one into two, who knows? But that was just the conversation. I was like, I'd love to play around with that conversation with people to see what their thoughts are.
Yeah. Things that we're going to talk about that conversation, because the next conversation was with Greg, and
Yep.
I'm gonna ask Greg about it a little bit in a second. But so obviously this like rings true to a certain extent.
100%.
Costs in, um, costs that would maybe be higher in an old property versus a new construction property.
Mm-hmm.
I heard
Mm-hmm.
insurance, maintenance, anything like talk to me about how you think about, because with your data flywheel, how you think about like the costs in new construction versus existing.
Yeah, happy to do that. I mean, the first thing that is just ringing true is that this is such a common thought with newer investors and more experienced investors. It's something worth bearing. So I'm so glad that we were talking about it at Summit. I'm so glad I had the opportunity to chat with Michael and Ann before the show, and then we were bringing it here because I think everybody can get value from it. One of the reasons that it is a common thought is that it typically happens when you have a property that has higher maintenance costs.
Mm-hmm.
There might be an unexpected high maintenance cost that comes your way, and we're all human. The first time that happens, if you get a multiple $1,000 cost coming your way that you're not expecting, your first thought is to be emotional, right? Your first thought is like, I don't want that, right? Like I didn't want that,
Yeah.
right? But sitting down with Michael and Ann and in this conversation today, we're going to get an opportunity to look objectively at what's the right move as your own financial engineer. Is this something that is historically happening that is going to lead to future historical or future maintenance costs of a similar nature? Or is it a one-time thing that happened? And if we can separate it and just look objectively at it versus separating it from the emotion, we have the opportunity to be the best financial engineer, to set ourselves up to make sure that we can produce the most in those profit centers from all of those, or from all 5 profit centers, not just the net rental income. So that's the first thing, is we got to separate the emotion of a painful maintenance experience from the dollars and cents today and looking out for the next 10 years. And I think that's a really important lesson for today. You had asked about the difference between renovations and new construction when it comes to maintenance costs. There is a difference. You would see it on every pro forma when you buy a JWB property. There's a maintenance expectation of 4% of the gross rents per year for a new construction home, and it's 7.5% of the gross rents for a renovated home. So there is a difference. But you know what I would say is that that difference doesn't typically equate for a reason for somebody to go from a renovated home to a new construction home. It's usually a high ticket, unexpected item that happens that kind of triggers this. Because no matter if you have a renovated home, which is expected to have slightly higher maintenance cost, or a new construction home, at the end of the day, you get to the same place for your expected return on investment. Yeah. Because your maintenance cost is lower on new construction. Your property taxes are higher on new construction. Your maintenance cost is, your insurance is a little bit lower on new construction. So at the end of the day, renovations, maintenance, renovations or new construction, you kind of get to that same kind of objective conclusion that either of them can win. And it's not usually the trigger for somebody to say, you know what, that's what I want from new construction to, or from renovations to new construction. It's usually some high ticket triggered maintenance item.
Excellent. And that is essentially the difference between it's in like purchasing decisions, right? Like when I think of this dynamic of like the maintenance of buying new construction versus renovation, I think of it from a standpoint of a renovation will have a lower price and will have, like maybe like elevated expenses, like, 7% versus 4%, right? Like it'll have more maintenance, same return. New construction has higher price, same returns, lower maintenance costs. And I guess I think of it as like, if it's a purchasing decision, I'm thinking of just like, okay, the first couple of years in this new construction is going to be a little bit less variable than in a renovated. Is that how you would say it, Michael? Like, is that kind of like your belief?
Well, that's kind of the take of what I found, because I have new construction and I have some renovated properties. Now, granted, I have some of the greatest appreciation in those renovated properties, which, is part of the reason why you buy renovated properties, because, the cost entry versus the rent. But in the long run, what I was looking at was, and again, what kind of bring it full circle is, if I could retail this property for X dollars and with a small amount of cash out of pocket, moving it into a newer property, would I eliminate that maintenance expense? And, would it make a difference? Substantial difference. And I think what Greg found out was probably not.
Well, let's talk about the conversation you and I had.
Sure. Just real quick, David Baird wants to know: is that a 4% and 7% that we're talking about on maintenance? Is that of the purchase price? Is that of the money that you bring to the table? What's the 4% versus 7%?
It's of the gross rental income.
Of gross rental income, David.
And that's why that's a good question, because if you run the math, you look at rent of, let's say, $1,500 a month times 12 is 18,000. You run the difference between 4% or 7.5% on an $18,000 number. It's not mind blowing. It's not like it takes it from a great experience to a bad experience or vice versa, right? So the delta there of the maintenance cost is relatively minor in the grand scheme of the investment. And that's why, new construction renovations each can work for the investor. It's not like it's thousands of dollars one way versus another.
Got it. Okay. So then, Michael, take us into the conversation. So you're like, I want to have these conversations with other advanced investors. I was like, cool. Didn't really happen at Summit, but I, kind of connected you to the most advanced investor I know, which is Greg. You guys had a little powwow.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Tell me
Yeah,
about
no,
that
we had a
conversation.
powwow about it, and I kind of told Greg where my head was and how I came to this conclusion and what my thought process was, and you guys hit the nail on the head. You cannot get emotional about these things. When you have a property turn, yeah, you could have a property turn for 3,000, 5,000. I've had, situations that would scare the pants off of most investors, but it's just the cost of doing business. I had a situation where I had to rewire a house because the insurance said, well, the house has old wiring. Okay, well, you just do it. You have to anticipate those things. And, we could go on for days and write a book about all the things that can go wrong. But when you play your cards right and you anticipate things going wrong, when they don't go wrong, you almost feel like you hit a home run when they don't. Like when I have a property turn, it only costs like $3,000. I feel like I hit it out of the park. That was great. So that's kind of the gist of it. And so when Greg and I sat down and had the conversation, he kind of took in all the information and what Ann and I were concerned about. And we talked about the whole, when you rebalance a stock portfolio, you sell the stocks that are losing, you take your tax losses at the end of the year and so on. And so it got me thinking about the whole, could you do that with real estate? And that's kind of where Greg and I teed it up and had the conversation about, here's my thought, here's what I'm thinking. And then Greg came back with some facts.
What were those facts you see?
Well, I think access to information really helped us. We knew that we were going to go about this in an objective, numbers-based decision. And, I'm the greatest fan of Michael and Ann. And if there is a way to generate more money, I mean, part of the things that I get to do with some of our more advanced clients is say, hey, here's your money with JWB. Is there a way we can maneuver it around to get you a better return on investment? So that I love that conversation. But we didn't have all the information. Michael, I think when the first aha moment was the value of your asset.
Yeah,
Right.
I was using your traditional Zillow and realtor.com and whatnot. And I was just trying to come up with an idea, which is very difficult because where I live in Northern Virginia, if you go to a street, the houses on the street are usually within a similar price point. They might be plus or minus a couple percentage points, but the challenge I have is in Jacksonville, I got to rely on experts like you guys to tell me, this house is substantially worth a lot more money because it's a 5 bedroom in this neighborhood and a block away or the house next door, whatever. So the price variable is a lot different. So I was way off on my retail pricing.
Yeah. And that's important because we got to see the big picture. If we're going to make the best objective decision about this, we got to have all the information. So Michael hadn't realized how much his home was worth and how much it had appreciated, which can change the dynamic of the conversation for sure. We had a good in-depth conversation about the maintenance costs that were coming along with the property. And then we talked a lot a bit about, how is, when we talk about how the rental the profit centers get better with time. What does that really mean? And we talked about, and really kind of where we landed, Michael, you can kind of fill in the gaps here, but,
Sure.
ultimately we talked about how, the great decision that Michael made to invest in this property 7 years ago was delivering a higher net rental income than a replacement property would. And, I say this, and I wanted to make sure people understand that that's winning in rental property investing. That's how it's built, because we always talk about how the rental property investing or the profit centers are like fine wine. They get better with time. That means that home values go up over time. That means that rents go up over time and the majority of your expenses are flat. So things are just getting better and better. Well, the flip side of that is if you look at the inventory 7 years later after you made that decision, as home values have gone up and as rents have gone up and all those things, your expenses are fixed for the most part on your previous decision. You compare that to the decision 7 years later, it's going to be very rare that you find that replacing that asset is going to be a good decision from a net rental income perspective. We kind of walked through some of the numbers and I gave some shorthand, easy ways to kind of calculate. And Michael, you can kind of fill in the gaps, but I thought it was really cool because I believe Ann, your wife, was already calculating some of these shorthand ways to kind of calculate which is the better income potential.
Yeah, she definitely is a lot better with the numbers than I was, which is part of the reason why we ended up in Jacksonville from where we were previously invested in.
I
So
remember that.
yeah, but she definitely did the numbers and she saw where you were going with it immediately. So when we were having our conversation before the call, as soon as you brought up those numbers, she just kind of goes, I see exactly where he's going with this. And so it was kind of like it kind of settled the discussion fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's like we want you to be in an asset that is producing the best return on investment. And a very important part of that for Michael and Ann is income right now. They're in retirement. They've worked really hard. They want to make sure that they have the right amount of income coming in. And so we kept that as a priority. And we said, all right, well, is the decision to stay with this asset going to deliver an overall better return on investment and more income than the alternative of a replacement property? And that's where we landed.
Greg Cohen, marriage mediator, is what I heard.
Yeah, no, well, and Greg and I met back in 2016, and I was very reluctant to even think about JWB at the time because I was like, how am I going to invest outside of the area where I live? The farthest I've ever invested was 3 hours away, and I was like, investing in Jacksonville, and back in 2016, Jacksonville isn't what it is today, and back then it had a history that people were like, my mom was like, no way, don't you dare invest in Jacksonville, and so, talked about it with Greg and, we had long discussions about it and we took our time and push comes to shove. We moved things from the properties we had here to Jacksonville and, just looking back and saying thank you for allowing us to be a part of the ride.
Man, oh, well, you're absolutely welcome. Getting to work with you guys is a huge highlight. Just earning people's trust is a huge highlight for me. And, it takes time and it takes, following through on the little things and the big things. And I remember when you guys gave your trust to me to move this portfolio forward. And now we're sitting here 10 years later and we're getting to celebrate the success together. So thank you,
And,
guys.
that's one of the biggest things I think a lot of people, don't realize with real estate, it's like you've said many times before, Greg, it's boring. Well, one of the things you have to remember with boring is time. So, you're not going to, unless you're out there flipping properties, taking high risk, borrowing hard money, getting out there and flipping properties, this is not a silver bullet. If you have a W-2 paycheck and you're working a 9 to 5 job or you've got a career and you're making decent money, you don't want to take on a second job of managing properties. So this is a great way to invest for the long term. It's boring, but you got to be in it for a full cycle. I mean, 7 to 10 years, don't look at the first 3 to 4 years if you have maintenance issues or whatever the problems were. I mean, if you've got, an eviction that pops up in year two, it happens, but don't think you got to look at it over a, 7 to 10 year span and then make a decision. If you want to make a decision, like I was saying, all right, I've owned these for 7 to 10 years. Does it make sense to swap this property out for another? Because I've had it a full cycle. I've got a ton of equity in it. It's at, peak rent. It's been completely renovated basically twice when I bought it and over the last 7 to 10 years. So it doesn't make sense. And that's kind of where we came to where we are now.
Man, that's really good context, right? Like I know that I was somebody that went through I bought right before COVID. I had one of those kind of like evictions that happened during COVID, went through it, held on to it because thanks to Greg's advice, like telling me, no, man, this happens. It could happen early, it could happen late, but it's the matter of like holding on exactly what you just said, right? Like exactly what you just said is exactly what you always say.
Yep.
So it's really cool to just kind of like see this advice coming from within the community from someone who is obviously like one of the most successful folks in the community. There's clues here, right? Like this like success leaves clues. So that being said, we're going to dive into the actual numbers. Greg actually put together the actual numbers so that we can show it to you all of what that conversation looked like with Michael and Ann. Before we go there, we have a couple of questions. The first one, Cliff, who checked in early from Atlanta, popped in really, really early asking a question that I think we can give you like a short answer, Cliff, but what I would love to do is give you like a personalized answer. So I asked you in the chat if what you registered on Zoom is like the best way to get back to you so that the JWB team can get back to you. But the question is, what are average insurance rates and average tax rates for an average 1,500 square foot house in Jacksonville? He's trying to gauge these experiences for his calculations.
Sure.
And I guess what I can say is, all that stuff is calculated in anything that you're already talking to the team in, but otherwise it sounds like a custom answer to get back to him on, or
yeah, it's definitely a custom answer to give you the data that you're looking for. I can give you a general kind of guideline here, but anytime you're going to make an investment decision, you're going to want to look at this in a total pro forma layout. Our team is happy to do that with you. You can use that to make your decision with JWB. You can also use that information to make decisions outside of JWB. So would encourage you to go to chatwithjwb.com, sign up for an appointment and sit down with our team to give you an even better answer. With all that being said, I think you asked for a 1,500 square foot home. I'm going to assume it's new construction. I'm going to give you just the general, ranges here. Insurance is probably way less than you expect. Insurance is maybe $700 to $800 a year for your premium because it's brand new construction. So all that noise about insurance being way cost prohibitive in the state of Florida is not what is happening here at JWB and here in Jacksonville. So $700 to $800 a year. Your property taxes in the state of Florida are low compared to other states as well. So your property tax is somewhere maybe around $3,000 to maybe $3,500 a year for a new construction property.
Cool. All right. And then the Shaw man, Nadeem Shah, has a question. Will JW, we're talking about selling, like in your portfolio and exchanging for something else. Shaw man is asking, will JWB help in selling a property to do a 1031 and buy a new property? And does JWB charge a commission for helping sell the property?
Yes, we are happy to help you sell a property if that's the best thing for you. Even before that, we want to talk with you like we are with Michael and sit down and think, is this the right thing for you? So if you would be so kind as to include us in the decision, 99% of the time, we're going to help you make a better one. So that would be the first step. And if selling is the right move, we have our own brokerage in-house. So we are able to help you have a team of experienced real estate agents that can help you get top dollar for your home. Yes, we do charge for our services, as any real estate agent would. And then specifically about a 1031, we are just about the most experienced group when it comes to 1031s. We have a wonderful teammate we could put you in touch with as well. But I think the bigger thing is let's just put a strategy together. Let's make sure it makes sense for you to sell. Sometimes it does. And then let's execute it within the JWB network so that you can have the best experience and the best return on that investment.
And Marty Quinn has another really good question. Marty, we're actually going to answer this in the flow of the show, right? But I'm just previewing it. Is what is the current market like in Jacksonville if he wanted to sell one of his 3 houses that cost him around $24,000 in unforeseen maintenance expenses in 2.5 years, right? So we're going to talk exactly of like what that looks like a little bit later in the show, Marty. So as long as you can stick around and not watch the replay, but I don't want to interrupt for that because we're going to get there. So that being said, we're talking. Michael has a whole bunch of homes, right? Like you listed these out, GC, of how long he's owned them and the cash flow that he's getting right now. Out of the 13 homes that he has, 2 of them are right now averaging this like negative monthly cash flow. And this one, 7447 Sky Drive, is the one that Michael was specifically asking about. So you put together this case study. Anything that you want to talk about here as far as like snapshot of the whole thing?
I mean, I think I just went to work with the numbers. After hearing Michael and Ann's conversation, I said, let's put the numbers to it. We had a good idea of where we were going to land, but I said, you know what, this is a great teaching opportunity for all of our folks in the community and my team who continues to get questions like this over and over and over again. It's one of the best ways we can serve clients. So we put the actual numbers to it. And what you'll see on this slide is the punchline here is Michael has earned over $442,000 in positive cash flow over owning these properties, some for 10 years. There are some that have enormously more cash flow than we ever expected in the original pro forma with Michael. And there are some that have less than we would expect. And that is normal. This portfolio mindset is what has played out for Michael. And so you'll see there's 2 out of the 13 that are negative cash flow situations. And Michael, being the great financial engineer that he is he's saying, well, what can I do to make this, can financially engineer this better? And so that's where this conversation started. But overall, you'll see large differences. Part of this is just the success of the next net rental income of the property. And a lot of it is determined by the decision to either buy in cash or to buy with conventionally financed properties. The ones that are the $800 a month on average or $1,000 a month on average, those are the purchases that were made with all cash. The ones that are less, the $100 a month, $200 a month, maybe $400 a month, generally those are the ones that are financed because he has a mortgage payment to make on those.
Yep. Michael, you track this stuff, right? This doesn't this isn't new news to you, right?
No, and this is kind of what gave me the, where I was like, what can I do to, tweak it, and like you and I were talking before the show, it's kind of like the movie Moneyball. Do you take, an underperforming player and replace it. You want it with a getting on base. I just want to get a lot of on bases. I'm not, if I have a home run hitter in here, great. That's awesome. Let's keep those guys, but if I have somebody who's really dragging down the portfolio, does it make sense to replace?
Yep.
Michael playing Moneyball with his portfolio. I love it. All right, so let's get into this case study of 7447 Sky. This is this is one of these properties that, has averaged negative monthly cash flow. Does it make sense to 1031 it into a new construction home? Do you want to start talking us through this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went back to the original pro forma. Let's understand, I know we've had more maintenance costs, but is this a winner property? Are we overperforming if we think beyond maintenance costs? Because if we're thinking about selling this thing, we need to know if it's a winner, right? Sometimes when we think about the most recent maintenance item, it can tarnish an otherwise winning property. So we went back to the original pro forma. When Michael and Ann decided to purchase this property in 2019, this is exactly what they saw. Their purchase price was $138,000, and their original estimated rent was $1,000 a month. They purchased it with 20% down, conventional financing. And then you see at the bottom, what we told them to expect in this asset is a 9% return year over year. So that's the foundation.
Okay, so this is the foundation of the original pro forma of SkyDrive, and this is Instagram versus reality.
There you go. This is estimates versus actuals here. And it's broken down by the different profit centers that we have. So we looked lifetime from 2019 all the way to the end of 2025. And we said, okay, what was the pro forma stating we should have for our lifetime? What do we have actuals from all of these profit centers? And number one, are we winning or losing? And then number two, how are we winning? And when you look at the very bottom there, the return on investment, overall, we told Michael to expect a 9% return on his investment. His return is 18% per year for this asset here on Sky. We've doubled the return expectation. So I know it's been painful, and Michael and I talked about this. A sucker punch with a maintenance cost out of left field is what he experienced. We're going to get into that in a little bit more here. But it's important to think overall here, how is his money performing, especially for some of those profit centers that you don't feel in your bank account every single month? Yeah. We are absolutely crushing it when it comes to the overall return, and especially when we look at home price appreciation as well.
I know that you said that a lot of this stuff is like curbing the emotion of a maintenance expense. Michael, I mean, you took a sucker punch to the gut of a big maintenance expense, and now you see this thing doing double like the return on investment. Does that help with this decision for you right now, or are we going to find out where it helps later?
Oh no, like I said, when I was on the call with Greg, Ann saw that immediately, and within 15 minutes of our conversation, we realized, not because Ann and I are not working, we're retired, and we're relying on our, investments to give us monthly income and our private money lending for income. When we see negative cash flow or low cash flow, it's like, what can we do to increase the cash flow? But then when we saw that we were completely off on the appreciation piece, it's kind of all made sense that, as much as we thought this property was a big loser, it actually is a big winner because of that Pac-Man. One of those pieces was substantially larger than we thought it was, which made up for the negative cash flow. So we might not be getting cash flow like we wanted to out of it, but we're still getting the tax savings. We're still getting the pay down, the mortgage pay down. We're still getting the appreciation.
And that happens so often with clients. And it is so hard for a client to be able to understand what their market value really is. I did want to let everybody know that all of these numbers are provided for you all, for every client, as a part of JWB's continuing ongoing services. We do this through our reporting. Our client ROI report has significantly been upgraded over the last few years. And so now this number for you all to see how much your home price appreciation is visible for everybody when you log in to that report. And if you have any questions, reach out to the team. I wanted to let everybody know, because I get this question a lot, especially when I talk with clients. They'll say, you know what, I don't know what my market value is. I look at Zillow, or I look at Redfin, or I look at Realtor.com, and this is what I think it is. I want to let you know that some of the most highly compensated and talented people in JWB are responsible for setting what your estimated market value is on this report. It is like the most qualified appraisal or comparative market analysis that you could do by a team of professionals that invests hundreds of millions of dollars in Jacksonville real estate, and they're looking specifically at your asset. And they're saying, this is what the market value is today. So it is a very, very valuable tool, very, very valuable tool. It's included in all of your services, no additional fee for us to do that. We do this to show you how much your asset is really worth. And we do it for thousands of properties every year. So if you haven't checked into your client ROI report recently and you're curious about what your market values are, please do that. I think it might surprise some of you.
That makes a lot of sense.
Oh, I did want to make one more point.
Yeah.
I can totally see where Michael and Ann are coming from here, because if you didn't know, if you had just been to Zillow and you didn't know what the market value was, you take that $82,000 off the table there, and now you start to see basically break even.
Yeah.
And that's where, I think it's a very genuine question comes into play. Hey, listen, is this a loser? Should I replace, but now a little bit better access to information, and it changes the game.
Makes sense. I got a question, asking for my friend Mike Foster. What's up with the tax savings? What happened there?
That's a great question. Well, the way tax savings are calculated is based on you receiving positive rental income. So when we estimate that he would have received $4,000 of positive net rental income, the tax savings is a factor of how much you save when you don't have to pay taxes on the positive net rental income that you're receiving.
Got it.
So when you have negative net rental income like we have here, well, your tax savings are not going to be as plentiful as well.
Okay. Great question as usual from Mike Foster. All right. So this is the what was expected versus reality. We took away this idea that the home price appreciation has really driven a whole bunch of wealth for Michael and Ann, even though the cash flow piece didn't hit and overall doubled the performance expectations. So what's next here?
I just thought, just a side note here, really cool to see how much home prices and monthly rents have grown in Jacksonville overall, and specifically for Michael and Ann. When we bought the property, the market value was $138,000. It's currently $220,000. The monthly rent was $1,000 when they bought it in 2019. It's currently rented for $1,479. So you're talking about an additional $5,000, $6,000 a year of gross rental income for this asset. And this is normal. This is just buying and holding and following that boring business model that I tell you. When you own properties for a full market cycle, you're going to have similar numbers to Michael and Ann here. And it's something that should be celebrated. And you don't have to think of the next greatest thing to do. It just happens because of the way inflation and supply and demand work in a growing market like Jacksonville.
And Greg, let me add to that real quick, because you're right. It was $1,000 in 2019, and now it is $1,479. However, in 2019, you thought that the rent would be about $1,080. So it's actually bringing in way more rent than we anticipated when we first bought it, by a lot.
Explain that, Michael. Are you going back to the original pro forma and seeing what his projections were for rent in 2026 and holding them to? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. So when I was looking at this property, every time you look at a property, you get an Excel document based off of showing you what the 10-year horizon of this property potentially looks like, building in vacancy, building in future maintenance cost, whatever the future cost will be, taxes, property, all of that. So you don't want to look at 1 year. So it's good to look at 10 years. And so over that 10-year horizon, Greg gives you an idea of here's what we think the rent's going to be. Now, granted, at the time, we didn't know what was going to happen with COVID. We didn't know the real estate values were going to take off like they did. But realistically, we thought that the rents would be around $1,100 within 5 years. And, as we are sitting here today, they're $1,479.
Pretty good.
Under promise and over deliver is the way we like to do it.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry we missed on that, Michael. Hopefully you forgive us.
That's okay. I'll let you off the hook on that one.
All right. So talk me through this.
Yeah. So we talked about big picture. We understand it's a winning property, but let's not mistake the fact that there have been way more maintenance costs than what we expected in that pro forma. Let's lean into this mindset now. Okay. So I broke it down. We've had about $20,000 of maintenance costs for this property over a 7-year hold. That is a lot more than that 7.5% maintenance expectation. So Michael and Ann are certainly justified to ask questions. Hey, listen, we're missing the boat here on the maintenance side. Now, we've won in a number of other places, but we're missing the boat here. So I broke that down. Now they've only actually had one property turn in 7 years, which is way below expectations.
Pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, way below expectations. For that one property turn, they only came out of pocket about $2,500 for the cost. And then we re-rented it 44 days later. So my first thought was, well, how are we getting to this large maintenance item? Is it continued re-renting and turning of the asset and turning of the property and maybe long vacancy? And that's not it. What we found is that we had one large major electrical issue in 2025, and that accounted for about $15,000 of expense. So when we talk, Michael, about this sucker punch that you had coming in from left field, this is that sucker punch, that $15,000 expense. Is that how you felt when that one came by?
Yeah, it was. And just on a side note to let, because I know that some people talk on the side, I reshopped the insurance on all my properties because over the years, yes, insurance rates went up, and we found out that more insurance companies were coming in. I did reshop the insurance, and I saved a lot of money by reshopping that insurance. The only challenge was when you change insurance companies, they do a 4-point inspection on all your properties to make sure that they're up to code. And the Florida code changed in like 2021, 2022, or somewhere around there. And the electrical in this house did not meet the new requirements, which is the reason I had to do it, which I was fine doing because I didn't want to have an electrical fire. And if the house had old electrical, I wanted it upgraded, so I did do it, and I was more than happy to pay the 15,000 to do it. It hurt. It was a sucker punch, but I did it. And I also felt like the tenants would appreciate it because now they have all new electrical in the house, and they can probably not have the lights dimming when a blow dryer is running or something.
There you go.
Okay.
A little bit of a proactive approach to it, but nobody likes it when they have a $15,000 expense. So certainly
No, it hurts no matter how much it's positive, it hurts.
Right.
Yeah. I just also want to say, just because I've seen you give advice like this in the past, Michael, in like our chats, you are generally a proactive guy with this stuff. Like, you're generally somebody that looks at if there's an opportunity to improve something on the property that will yield a better tenant experience and derive some kind of value, you tend to do it, even though you live off the cash flow of these properties.
Yeah, I mean, I've been lucky in the sense, like Greg said here, I've only had one turn on that property. I've got one property that people have been in for like 9 years. I really would love somebody to go in there and check the place out to make sure everything's okay. Is the hot water heater okay? Is the HVAC okay? Even though there's not a problem that's being reported, is there something that we can do now that's not going to turn into a, Christmas night, plumbing problem or something major? Is it proactively identifying, this hot water heater is 15 years old. We might want to think about replacing it, even though, just kind of putting it on the radar.
Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we got to kind of jam a little bit because I think we're a little bit behind on schedule here, GC, right? So then this was the breakdown. Oh, I guess we're not that behind on schedule. If we're about to get to like this like decision point. Real quick point of clarification, Michael. I was thinking about this too. Tara's asking, you're losing if you lost money on this property, right? Like this 15K expense, you're living retired.
Right.
Where's this money coming from? Is this coming from reserves that you have? Is this coming from the cash flow of the other properties? How did you pay this thing if you're retired?
So how's it benefiting me?
Yeah, well, I'll just ask it word for word. If he's losing money on it and is retired, where's the money coming from to pay for those expensive year over year? Is he pulling from savings or other pockets of cash? While the property appreciated, the property isn't supporting itself year to year. Can you explain that a little further?
Right. So what I do is I have a cash reserves, and I make sure that I set aside a certain amount. I think Ann runs that number. I want to say it's something like $10,000 or $12,000 that we do not touch. We leave it there for an emergency. Anytime that cash reserves gets above that number, we can pull that money off the table and use it for whatever we want. We've been lucky enough that we haven't had a ton of that happen. And so if you looked at some of the other properties, a lot of them were knocking it out of the park. So they were making up for the ones that weren't doing well. And then we use that money for private money lending, or we use that money for a down payment on another property, or we'll pay down, the mortgage on some of the loans. So you kind of have to hold that. So yeah, if you look at one property, you're going to have a problem. But we could have this conversation, and I could show you another property that we're killing it. People live there for 9 years, have had like very little maintenance at all, and the property's appreciating like great. That's going to be a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah. I think you just said it so well. Paulo, go back to that slide where we looked at the different cash flows of the different properties. We'll take 2 seconds and just look at this, but it's easy to see where Michael is paying for the $133 a month that Sky on average is losing, because you've got 11 other properties that are generating $3,000 to $1,000 a month.
And in reality, Sky's not losing $133 a month. If you average out every month, Sky is losing $133 a month. Sky is positive cash flow month over month. He's not carrying that. It's just that this one big hit came and punched him in the face.
That was a one-time hit in 1 month. And the other thing that, I don't know if you even brought it up in here, Greg, is you also have to take consideration depreciation. So a lot of depreciation means that I pay less in federal and state income taxes at the end of the year too.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. All right. So let's get to this idea of sell or buy. Marty, this is where your question is going to get answered right now. GC, talk us through this.
Yeah. So then it's, there's the decision to sell or retain it, or maybe buy the brand new shiny object, the brand new construction home. And so these are the things that you should consider when you are making this decision. Number one, keep in mind that past maintenance costs do not dictate future maintenance costs. This is one thing that I think many investors get wrong, and it forces them into a place of making a less than ideal decision. And here's an example. Michael just spent $15,000 on an electrical upgrade for his property, right? Without that $15,000 expense, this is cash flow positive. We're basically meeting our net rental income expectations. If you remember from the original pro forma, it's not like because he spent $15,000, it's going to necessarily mean there's going to be another 15. And you could actually make the opposite argument because he took care proactively of a major expense item. So you would think that, expenses in the future will actually be less, which is what we see many, many times. Sometimes problem properties that have higher than expected maintenance costs in the short run, 5 years later, 10 years later, through that lens, become the favorite property of that client. And I know there's many, many examples of that. Some folks come to mind who are in the chat right now could probably chime in on that. So past maintenance items do not dictate future maintenance costs.
Correct.
You have to think about number two. I'm sorry, Michael, did you want to jump in there?
No, I agree. You're right. It's just, it's not an ongoing expense on a regular basis. They're just jabs that hit you every now and then.
Exactly. As long as you're prepared, like Michael and Ann are, then you can weather the storm when it happens and see the bigger picture of creating a $2 million portfolio, which is what they've accomplished. So going back to this decision, you have to think about, okay, well, what profit centers would I give up if I sell and replace? We talk a lot about how when you buy and you hold every year, those profit centers on that property get better and better and better. So there's an opportunity cost of those better profit centers that you'd be giving up. We need to understand what those are. We need to understand if that replacement property will produce more cash flow. We'll take a look at this in just a second, and we'll answer that question. We also need to think about the property that I would be replacing. What's the return on that investment going to be compared to what I'm currently getting on my asset? We need to think about what the costs are involved with selling the original property.
Marty's question.
Yep. We'll get into that. We have that broken down here. And then right now is a special time to buy assets. So one of the questions that Michael and Ann asked, they said, you know what, JWB is offering incentives, builders are offering incentives. So it makes it really attractive to buy properties right now. What incentives are being offered? And more importantly, do the incentives that are being offered outweigh the costs that come along with selling? And so we're going to break that down here. But these are the questions that you should consider if you're considering the same thing.
Cool. This is a good one to take a screenshot of if you're watching this so that you're running through this. All right, GC, talk me through the decision.
All right, so GC fashion here, I put the numbers to it. So what we were able to do, number one, is to see if the asset on Sky Drive is a better performing asset from a return on investment perspective and from a cash flow perspective. I'm going to introduce a term here called cap rate. Cap rate is an easy way to see which property has more cash flow potential. And what cap rate does is it takes out of the equation financing. So anything financing related, like your mortgage payment or interest rate or things like that, just puts it to the side because it's not relevant. It's strictly just looking at how much income, net operating income, can the property produce compared to what the original purchase price was of the home. And so you see all the numbers here. Feel free to take a screenshot of it. But ultimately, what you see here is that Sky Drive has a cap rate of 7.2%. And a replacement property, a brand new construction property that you would be buying now in JWB or really in the rental market here, is going to have a much lower cap rate. The reason is because home values have gone up so much over the last 7 years, and because rents have gone up so much over the last 7 years, and because the majority of your expenses are actually held constant. Owning this property on Sky Drive is going to produce almost double the amount of income in normal years than a replacement property. And then ultimately, we look at the return on investment. As we mentioned before, Sky Drive is a big winner when we think about all profit centers. You're producing at an 18% return on your investment, and profit centers get better and better over time. So we would expect that to continue versus a replacement property where, I hate to sound negative about a replacement property. You know how much I believe in our properties that we're selling right now, but this is the way, your replacement property is going to produce about 12%. The caveat here is remember what we told Michael to expect.
Yeah.
For his Sky Drive property, we told him to expect 9. We produced 18. We are always conservative.
Yeah.
But this is the reality. Real estate over time goes up in value and rents go up in value, but they don't go up in value as much. And so it's almost without exception, if you look 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, that property that you held on to for those 5 years or 10 years is going to have a better cap rate and return on investment than the one that you would potentially be selling into. So there must be a bigger, different reason if you're considering selling. Usually staying in the same market with the same team is not going to play into your benefit. You'd be trading a better return on investment property for a lesser return on investment property.
It's kind of like that saying, best time to plant a tree was, 20 years ago.
Right.
Second best time is right now, right? It's still a good time to plant a tree, but if you were to have owned this already, having that tree right now is already bearing fruit. It's already doing all these different kinds of things.
That's the thing to lean into
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah.
We have to thread the needle here because earning a 12% return on investment with a 4%, income product coming to you is a great investment compared to the alternatives in the place today.
Yeah.
And this means that this model is working. So lean into what he said right here. And this is the way it'll be for all of you that own properties 5 years, 10 years. It'll look like this.
And Mark Norman had asked, does it ever make sense to actually do this? Does it ever make sense to actually do this? And my answer in the Q&A was, it's going to be really hard to get there. It's going to be really hard for it to make sense to trade a performing property that's already happening for a new one because of this idea, right? Like your IRR is going to be higher going forward in the one that you already own versus this new one. Would you add anything to that nuance?
If you are investing in the same model,
Yeah.
call it single family workforce housing,
Mm-hmm.
in the same market,
Yeah.
Jacksonville, with the same operator,
Yeah.
it is going to be very hard to find a reason to
Mhm.
sell an asset you've been owning for 5
Yeah.
years or 10 years and to put it into a new one. Now,
So you'd have to be change model, change market, change operator
There you go.
would be the beginning stage.
there you go.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So we also talked about this idea of the cost of selling. This is Marty, finally, your answer, buddy. I'm sorry that you've had to wait so long, but this is something that I think, Michael, you had some aha moments around kind of like the cost of selling as well, right?
Yeah, the cost of selling. I mean, obviously there's, I knew there would be vacancy and with the property while it's being on the market and paying to get it fixed up and everything. But where I was way off was on that, the actual value of the property.
Yeah. So that helps to look at the value and know that it's worth 220,000. I think this is a good learning lesson and teaching moment for everybody here about what it takes to sell a property in today's sales environment. Now, we do have a lot of sales in Jacksonville, but sellers have to work harder today to sell properties. As a macro statement, sales are lower today than they were 3 years ago. So if you're a seller, you have to work harder to sell your property. And what that means is you have to spend more money to be able to sell your property. So I pulled what the average sales transaction looks like for somebody selling a property today. This comes from our own data for JWB or from client data. And there's some things on here that are market related right now that aren't always in play, but they are right now. And this is why you need to talk to JWB before you're thinking about selling,
Mhm.
right? So we'll go down the list here. Number one, you always have real estate commissions. So a typical real estate commission is 6% of the sales price. That's 13 grand right off the top. That's typically always going to be there. You're always going to have closing costs. They might come in at 2 to 3% for your side of the closing costs. So that's another 7 grand right off the top. Now, this next one is a market specific timing, like where we are in the market right now. Concessions or buyer considerations. Almost every buyer that comes to the table here on the retail market, not turnkey, not investor, right? But on the retail market, somebody looking to move into that home.
Which is what you would sell this home into.
Exactly. Thank you for clarifying, right? The mindset here is Michael and Ann could get the most money for their home by selling it to somebody who wants to live in the home, not to an investor. Well, they're going to come in with things that they want you to fix or change, or, it's called buyer considerations or concessions. The average amount is 4% of the sales price. So that's about $9,000 that you need to do slightly differently than what your property already had in order to get that property sold.
Would BJ McKay asked this, right? Like, wouldn't have Michael have to have performed this electrical upgrade before selling this property into the the retail market to begin with, anyways? Or wouldn't that have been a concession?
Yeah, probably.
It probably would not have passed the home inspection.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go.
Probably.
So that would have been coming. I would have been a bullet that you would have had to buy anyway.
There you go. You could add 15 grand if we hadn't made that decision to do that back in the day.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's about $9,000. Now that's not at all times. That's a market consideration for today, which JWB can help you navigate. Is this the right time to sell today? Or maybe in a year from now, it's not as tough of a sales market. Yeah. And maybe that you can, that way you can, earn more of a return on your investment. The next thing is a property turn. There's a difference between a property turn like Michael's you've seen have been maybe $2,500 or $3,500 on average versus a retail level property turn. You have to put nicer stuff in your home today in order for the sale to be happening. In order for a buyer to want to live in that home, make it their own, it has to pop. Well, the average retail level property turn for JWB clients is $13,000, and JWB as well, is $13,000 right now. That's a moment in time in this market. So if Michael and Ann wanted to sell, that's another $13,000 off the top. You have vacancy costs. Again, if you're going to sell it, the best thing for you to do is sell it on the open market if somebody wants to live in the home. You can't have it rented at that point. So typically it's 4 months from the time that you no longer have a renter in place to doing the property turn, to listing it on the market, to getting to the sales closing table. So that's 4 months of vacancy costs, which is about $6,000. You're responsible for mowing and utilities and cleaning during that time, which those things add up to another $1,000 estimated. And then you get to the sale, and many times a retail buyer is going to ask for a discount to list price. And so that's another $4,000 discount, 4% discount off the top. For today's market, and it's not always this way, but for where we are right now, it totals up to about $57,000 that it would cost Michael and Ann, that they would be giving up from this wonderful profit that they have in the property to be able to sell it. And if we go back to those things that I suggested you consider, right now, Michael and Ann would receive about $15,000 in incentives to buy a new property. But in essence, they would be giving up $57,000, receiving 15, so it doesn't equate, and they would be losing money on that trade to get an asset that produces less net rental income over the next 10 years than the replacement property. And so that was the crux of the conversation that Michael and Ann and I had a couple of days ago. Michael, anything to add that I didn't go into detail there?
No. And again, I'm glad I went through this exercise. And, I'm not one for selling assets. I've always been a big believer, just hold them for 27 years. I mean, and then let's talk about it when I have no depreciation on it anymore. But until that happens, but the whole purpose behind all this was the conversation with Pablo of just saying, does it make sense to do that? And that was just a conversation I wanted to have. It's like Denny said in the chat there. He's like, today's dog is tomorrow's gem. That's very true. It could, very well could be, and most of the time it probably is, because I only did pay $138,000. As the rent keeps going up, I keep on making more based off my initial investment, and eventually this place will be paid off, generating more cash flow. And then once I've had all the maintenance issues done, they're not continuous maintenance issues on a regular basis. This could become a gem even if it was a dog in 25.
Well said.
So, Michael, what'd you decide?
I think I'm going to keep it. And once that dollar amounts goes above that $12,000 cash flow on a monthly basis, might be looking to pick up another property with the JWB.
There you go.
That's
There you go.
wonderful.
Good
That's
stuff.
wonderful.
Good stuff. That was awesome. That was a really, really cool breakdown. Let me ask something, Michael. Is the in the consideration to keep it,
Yeah,
how would you weigh, there's a couple of things that we looked at. We looked at kind of like the take the emotion out of it. And then we look at all this cost that's going to happen piece, right? So, there was a part where it's like, hey, this is what it's actually returned. And, like, remember that past maintenance isn't indicative of future maintenance and all these
correct.
kinds of things. And then there was like the idea of like, this is going to cost you 56 grand off the top to do this. So that's like a very like straightforward financial decision. How would you weigh those two things as far as like what the decision was to keep it? Like, at what point did you make that decision?
Well, I think the numbers, really when it comes down to it is you got to take the emotion out of it. I mean, we do not marry your investments. If you can't fall in love with an investment is just it's an asset that's going to help hedge against inflation. It's going to help you with your taxes. It's going to help you with your cash flow. But if you fall in love with it, it might be something that makes you hold on to something that you shouldn't hold on to. And so don't fall in love with them. But the maintenance are emotional because they hurt when they hit. And, you can't but help but be emotional about it. But once you take the emotion out of it, and then you look at the actual facts, the raw numbers like we did, which again goes back to our conversation you and I had is these are the kind of conversations I want to have with people so that we don't make these mistakes because I know some people in this group, in this chat, and family members who have said, I'm sick and tired of the evictions. I'm sick and tired of, the property turns being so high. And, I didn't expect a new roof and I didn't expect this. And they're getting physically emotional about it. And so real estate isn't for everyone. If you can't take the emotion out of it, then maybe you shouldn't invest in real estate. But if you can put your emotions on the sidelines and just go with the raw, hard facts and you look at the numbers of people that have become millionaires through real estate going back decades and decades and decades. They can't be wrong. You're gonna have a couple of bad, properties. I mean, we could write a book about it. Seriously.
Mic drop
Just
right there.
that was awesome.
That was awesome.
Let's just clip that thing and play it on a loop, man.
That was awesome.
I love it. Let's jam through. That was awesome, Michael. And you're getting a ton of love here in the chat of just like how
Thank you.
valuable this
No,
is.
thanks everyone. I
Just
appreciate
for the
it.
record,
Yeah.
just for the record. So let's crank through just quick questions here to get us out of here because
Cool.
we're a little bit over time. Mark Norman asks, back then to this idea of like tax savings, if positive incomes in the other properties, if he had positive income in the other properties, wouldn't he still be getting tax savings from even losing money here?
Yes, holistically, Michael has received a lot more tax savings than originally he expected because he has overperformed from a net rental income perspective for all of his properties. On that specific example, I was looking at just the tax savings for that specific property. But yeah, Michael's been winning in every single profit center holistically.
Yeah. All right. HCTN is asking, can you discuss properties owned in STIRAs? How would this equation, how would this decision be changed if it was held in a retirement account?
There's a number of things to consider in a retirement account. But at the end of the day, everything would be the same when it comes to this decision as far as as far as selling and buying a replacement property. The core theme that we just talked about is when you buy and you hold, it gets better with time. And because it gets better with time, your decision of buying that property 7 years later is not going to produce the same or as good of a return on investment. That's just how real estate works because things get better with time. It doesn't matter if you're in a self-directed retirement account or not. The financing changes and some other things may change and whatnot, but the key point here is when you buy and hold, this thing just works, whether it's in your retirement account or not.
Leslie was talking about this idea of it was when we had the what it costs to sell slide on.
Yes.
How would those numbers be affected if you would be selling to another investor? Would it also be another 56K off the top?
It would not be another 56K off of the purchase price, but ultimately your the amount that you would pocket would be less.
Mm-hmm.
So investors will require a much larger discount to market.
Yeah. It wouldn't be 56K cost to Michael.
Right.
It would be a bigger haircut off the price that they would pay.
Exactly. Yes. And that's why we would still advocate to sell it on the retail market because the profits Michael would give up are less on the retail market versus if he had to take a $50,000 haircut in order to sell it to an investor. Investors buy at a very steep discount, and that's why that wouldn't be the proposed plan if they did want to go and sell it. We're just gonna, first make sure it's good with their plans and their lifestyle, and if and when at any point that would be the right time to sell, we can execute that for Michael and Ann. But we're also going to look at what's the market doing right then, and it might not be the best time at that month to do it. So we're going to plan ahead a year or two, just like Michael and Ann do, and we would plan that ahead to make sure that we were selling at the ideal time.
Michael, I saw you smirk when I brought up the idea of selling to another investor. Was that because you had something to say about that?
I was just going to make a comment. I'm sure everyone on this call that owns real estate gets at least 1 or 2 calls a day from wholesalers, and I'll buy it the way it is, blah, 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 whatever, and all that. So yeah,
For 20 bucks.
Just, yeah, for 20 bucks, they'll take it off my hands and they'll probably wholesale it to somebody else. And but yeah, if you really want to get rid of a property quick and you're willing to take a big chunk and you really got to get out from underneath it, a wholesaler is going to just see that, and that's when there's blood in the water, and they're going to take advantage of that. And I'm not saying that wholesalers are bad. They fill a void that needed. I'm just saying that we all get those phone calls on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's not for full price.
The investor level market for something like this is, just a general rule of thumb, is about 70% of the market value minus the repair costs that they would put into that.
So that 220,000 minus the 70% of that minus repairs.
Probably offer 140 or 150.
Right.
70% minus repair cost.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if I said I was selling it for 140, I'm sure a lot of people would say they'll buy it.
You wouldn't have to do a retail level turn, but you'd take 80 grand off the price.
Yeah. So that Rob Jervins was asking, can an investor sell to another JWB investor? Same concept holds, right? Like if you're selling it to another investor, it's just not a favorable thing for you.
And we don't do that. We're not a marketplace for one of our JWB investors to sell to another investor.
Got it. Last question. BJ McKay says, do you figure out a set expectation of expenses from your annual rent received? Example, 2 out of 12 months goes to upkeep.
Yes, we do this. So we have an expectation for maintenance cost and vacancy cost. It's built off of managing, thousands of rental properties. So your maintenance cost expectations on a new construction home are 4% of the gross rents that are collected, and the vacancy expectation is 3% of the gross rents that are expected. So if you want to calculate that, take an average of $1,500 rent per month times 12 gets you to $18,000, and then if you combine those, 3% and 4% is 7%. Take 7% of $18,000, and that would be what we would tell you to set aside for expected maintenance and vacancy costs on an annual basis.
And just let it sit there. Don't touch it.
That's right. That's how you stay in the game.
I love it. I love it. Questions are officially closed. We went over by 12 minutes. Michael, I just want to say you're the man, dude.
No, I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much. I always learn a lot from the group as well. And I like to pay it forward and appreciate everyone with the questions. And, people have helped me in the past. And so I just like to help everyone when I can.
Well, we appreciate you. I think that you set like an unbelievable example. Like for me, I got a ton out of this, just like listening to you talking about this. And I get a ton out of you. You're one of the folks that gives us some of the best suggestions. Like you're never shy to say, hey guys, I'm a sales guy. I think you should talk about this.
Yes.
and it's so valuable to us, man. So I just, from like you doing this is great. But like from a personal level, like how many great suggestions you have brought it to us over the year, as well as like other people that you bring to JWB. Like you really, really, really are such a valuable, member of the community. But like to me on a personal level, you add a lot of value, man. So I just really, really want to thank you for doing this.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. And like I said before, many, many times, and I say it to everyone, and I'll scream it from the rooftops, I cannot think of another way to prepare for retirement than to put your money into a great asset like real estate. It's, you're not going to retire on a W-2 paycheck. I'm sorry. You can invest in your 401k. You can put your money in your IRA, your Roth and all that. But when push comes to shove, I'm collecting cash flow on a monthly basis. I still own all my assets. I'm not selling them to live off of.
I mean, I would say that piece of advice and one more piece of advice. What is it?
Don't
be average.